Hi guys, welcome to Behind the Mic, the podcaster's Playbook. I'm Refiloe, your host for today, and I am joined with Brad and Nick. Today we'll be talking about what podcasting is. So, Brad.
Podcasting.
Podcasting.
Yes.
What is podcasting? Tell me about it.
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind when people think about podcast is audio and like listening to a podcast, which is still the majority of podcasts that are out there in the world. For me, it's an audio-based, long-form piece of content that I don't actually have much further like classifications for it. I guess it'd be like platforms typically that they're on, either the major music streaming platforms. There's some podcast-specific directories. But yeah, fundamentally long-form, conversation-based content with a base in audio. But a lot of what we specialize is in video because of the marketing value.
When I think of podcasts, I mean, it's really just a conversation about a certain topic, it's like being able to really have a cool conversation. You can bounce off each other, and that's where the value sort of comes in, because you can get into a certain amount of depth on a certain amount on this specific topic.
What makes it so unique as a medium in today's day and age is that because everything else is trending towards how short form things get. So yeah, in a lot of ways it's quite antithetical to that. And we also use short form marketing for everything. And that's, again, where video comes in.
Nice. Thanks. Now I know what a podcast is.
Brilliant.
What do you think the opportunities are for podcasting in South Africa?
That's a good question, because it's a really cool time in podcasting in South Africa. The market certainly matured over the last kind of 6 months in terms of people who are interested in starting podcasts, the volume of interest, and I think the volume of audiences listening to South African podcasts. And I think that's both internally in South Africa and externally, as, in at least media and cultures. And I think as South Africans, we've got such a unique perspective to offer to the world that, I think we're at the beginning of a very exciting, burgeoning industry, because there's such a massive variety of stories to be told and conversations to be had in South Africa about so many things. And we've got such a rich history of storytelling and storytelling history and storytelling to move culture forward. And I think that's such a cool thing to lean into with the medium. So there's a lot of really cool things to be doing in podcasting in South Africa at the moment.
Sounds like a cool space to be in.
It is.
Exciting. So why should I start a podcast? Why start a podcast in general?
Why start a podcast? Why not start a podcast?
Brilliant.
Well, firstly, it's very easy to market, especially on social media. It's very easy to create a large amount of content from like an hour of conversation. There's a lot of collateral that you can pull out of it.
Yeah, I think it's a really kind of, to jump on that, it's a really natural and comfortable way for me, for someone who isn't naturally like a performer or I love talking to people and making advertising content.
Yeah.
It's a really comfortable way to make content for your audience, which feels natural and comes from a place of genuine interest and enthusiasm and education, or, unique IP that is relevant and valuable to them, but doesn't come across as like, I'm trying to sell you on us. It's like, here's, this is my area of expertise. I've got a lot of value to share. If you're interested in this, you'll find some value in this. And from that, you can create a large volume of really natural, organic feeling collateral content. So it's it's very efficient, but it's, I think, also about as pleasant and contrived as you can get if you're trying to make content.
Well, sure, guys. It sounds like you know a lot about podcasting, which is super cool. So, based on your experience, what are some of the benefits of starting a podcast?
I mean, the obvious one for me is just like increased awareness. And I think the best, most tangible, practical, real example of that is how we've seen our like inquiries and brand awareness fluctuate as our podcast, the CAYACast, was going out. It was an incredible lead generator for us in terms of just putting our name out there. Obviously, we were using our own product to promote our service.
Yeah.
So it was maybe uniquely good for us in that sense. You've got a high likelihood of finding the people who are going to find value in your topic or in your perspective. And particularly with how good things like TikTok are for showing you new content as opposed to people you follow, it's such a good way to connect your brand very organically and personably to people who may never have heard of you before, who just have a shared interest in what you do. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And I can't think of a lot of mediums that can do that without coming across as very silly or like, this is what I do, this is why you should be interested in me, which it doesn't tend to.
What's amazing about it can be about anything because it's literally just a conversation.
Yeah.
And if it's interesting to people, they will like listen to it.
Yeah.
If they find it interesting, they're going to listen, whether it's funny, whether it's just thought-provoking.
Yeah. And I think on that, because there's a lot of like, everyone's starting a podcast now. And I mean, part of that is evidence of the growth of the industry.
Yeah.
That kind of a buzz only happens at the beginning, of an industry, because it then, in a couple of years, it's just commonplace that it'll be a lot more common for a lot of brands and a lot of businesses and that kind of thing in South Africa to have podcasts, because that follows the trends overseas, which we tend to lag behind by a couple of years. And that's just what's happened. Because the podcast goes from this like, a couple of years ago when we started this company, 3 years ago this month, the birthday month, it was so early in the market. We didn't even specialize in podcasting. It was so early. There were like a few things cropping up. And shout out to a bunch of incredible podcasts that started back in those days. And it was like an unknown, and now it's become this thing that's getting picked up. So it's become like gimmicky, and then it becomes commonplace, and there's a lot more people doing it. But I think the point is there's still so much untapped audience. There's so much variety. It gives you access to an international market. If you can make valuable content in South Africa about something interesting, you can connect to people all over the world. There's absolutely nothing that says you can't. Everyone's using the same interwebs. You can do the funny shit with like tagging your videos into different locations, and also like you can access audiences all over the world. And there's still so many people coming into podcasting and listening to more and more podcasts. I think where people go wrong is making generic podcasts. If you make generic shit in a creative environment, obviously it's going to fail and you're going to have a crap podcast. And so like, don't do something boring or like, we're going to do a debate show about like, sports, and that's the entirety of your concept. And how many of those are there out there? Like, but if it's a bunch of data analysts who love sports and they're like, we're going to do this super analytical but super funny, but there's going to be an incredible depth to it, from a technical perspective, or it's like, find what makes your perspective unique. Why should people listen to you and lean into that? And then I think it's still early, and you can still build a lot of success. And it lends itself to so many other avenues of growth as well, like speaking, launching courses and shit like that. Like, it just establishes you as a thought leader in your field by virtue of having conversations with people you're interested in about things you're mutually interested in.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Every podcast that I love, I cannot stop yapping about. So I'm definitely like, it sounds like they took this advice. So nice.
Thank you, guys.
So I've learned so much about this. Thank you. Just to wrap up, I have one quick question that I think everyone's super interested in knowing about.
Shoot.
What are some myths about podcasting that you can just dispel for us right here, right now?
Right here, right now.
I think the biggest thing that sort of holds people back from wanting to start a podcast, they have this big idea, but they need to get the proper mics, the proper cameras, proper lighting. I mean, pull out an iPhone, use your phone as a mic. I don't know. Just get with what you can and make. I sit in here with Rode Procasters, multicams, saying but it's true. You don't need the big fancy equipment. The most important thing is the content. What are you talking about? The conversation you are having. That's what makes a podcast take off. The lighting, the mics, the cameras. That's all just bells and whistles.
It doesn't have to be like super crispy 4K, beautifully cinematically lit. It just doesn't need to be that. And I think the counterpoint to that is a really highly produced podcast that has neg content is gonna do horribly. I think the point is make the best out of what you have and prove the concept, and then you can always extend it and add things and add little bits where is most important. If you're interested in finding out those little tips and tricks and hacks and ways to make iPhones look and sound really, really great, we're really, really excited to be releasing our very first digital product. It's an ebook called The CAYA Guide to Podcasting. It will be, by the time this comes out, it'll be out. Go check it out. Link will be in our bio, in the bio of this. It'll all be linked, very easy for you to find. And it's pages and pages of all of our processes and checkings and how we set things up and best practice and guides and myths and tips and tricks and how to make things work. Which we're releasing for free. You just have to put your email in, and then we'll email it to you. So enjoy that. I think the other myth that people need to dispel immediately is the whole thing of thinking you're going to start a podcast and put out 2 or 3 episodes and then be like, why has my podcast not gotten any traction? Because people don't know it's there. It's way too early. Consistency is a huge factor in the success of a podcast. Consistency of release, consistency of various things, but mostly of cadence, how regularly you're putting out. And what you're effectively trying to do is make people make you a part of their routine in some way, shape, or form. 2-3 episodes in, you haven't given them enough to even remember the name. That some data out there suggests a brand needs to make around 7 impressions on an individual before they'll remember that brand. And yeah, even if you're putting out a decent volume of content, even if you haven't shown people enough consistency in what to expect yet, that they would, I'm going to subscribe to this on Spotify, or I'm going to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. It's a long game in the sense of you're trying to prove that you're going to show up consistently for people and consistently provide value, and then they will consistently come back and support you and help you grow.
It's like when you used to wait every week for your episode to come out. It's you got to get people excited about it, and that's when they keep coming back.
Cheers to that.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. I feel like I could start a podcast right now, but I won't without reading the new ebook that Brad told us about and without listening to more of these podcasts, because I think they would be extremely helpful. Thank you so much for teaching us a bit about podcasts, and I'm excited to hear from you again.
Thanks, Pili. And thanks to you all for watching this inaugural episode of Behind the Mic, a podcaster's playbook, with us, the CAYA team. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.